Hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. How's the baby?
He's doing good. Not sleeping sometimes, but sometimes sleeping good. So it just depends on the
Um,
day.
I understand. My brother just had a baby like 5 weeks ago too, so I'm having like all the same conversations with them. Like, are you sleeping? He's like,
Yeah,
oh,
some days are good, some days are not so good, but she's a
mhm.
new baby. She kind of comes with the
Oh,
territory.
yeah, of course, of course. That's exciting.
Yeah,
Family of four now.
yeah, we're loving it. It's been great. My whole family was here this week, so I've been trying to
Oh,
just see everybody and work and do
mhm.
all those things. That's always hard to do.
Very tough. I
Yeah.
commend you. It's
My
very.
mom just left to the airport, her and my stepdad. So it's just
Yeah.
my mother-in-law now. So we're slowly reducing.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot. It's exciting, but it is a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel you.
I wanted to maybe talk about like estrogen dominance today. I was
Hmm.
working with one of, I think it's your client. Is it Annie Flexer? Does that
Yep.
sound familiar?
Hmm.
She has like a ton of estrogen on her labs, and then she just got her
Yep.
GI map back and has a bunch of SIBO, so her Staphylococcus streptococcus is elevated and kind
Yep.
of really feeling that. So
Yep.
um, we actually have two people in, so I'll bring them in. Who's Corey Mims? Is that either of your client?
Nope.
Cece's yours, right, Lisa?
Oh yeah, she's mine.
I'm gonna let Cece in. I'll let Corey in. We'll see if the other ladies join. Yeah, I figured we would could just have a open discussion, around estrogen dominance and then maybe get into hormones a little bit. But uh, you know, I think that's something that a lot of practitioners kind of undermine when we're looking at labs and we have a woman who's maybe premenopausal or postmenopausal and decides to use hormones and can potentially have negative effects of estrogen. And I would be curious, maybe starting with like coaches. Is that something that you tend to deal with? I see it with some of our clients, but I would be curious if, Lisa, Charlotte, if y'all had any insight on that, of how regular occurrence that is, and then maybe we can get in some ways of managing that.
I think it's pretty common to see a little bit higher estrogen or estrogen dominant symptoms, very low progesterone. I'd say that's way more common than uncommon. But I think a lot of times just cleaning up the diet, which indirectly helps the liver out immensely, lowering sugar, lowering alcohol, all the heavy hitters or coming off of medication really can help the liver process the hormones a bit better and regulate them a lot more. That's my small take on it for sure.
No, I think that's good. I tend to see potentially issues with environmental toxins kind of
Mm.
driving up estrogen-like responses. And I think a lot of people undermine that from a standpoint of um, hormone balance. We're not taking in pesticides and plastics and heavy metals, and all those things can potentially drive up estrogen-like symptoms in the body. Is
Agreed. Xenoestrogens too. The clothes we wear, the makeup we wear, the shampoo, the conditioner, the cleaning products, like everything, every single thing, I think. Just a lot.
I'm fortunate as a male to not wear any makeup and not have to worry about as much of those things. But I'm sure that's a huge concern of like, am I putting the right things on my skin? I know a lot of women do use beauty product, and I'm sure that some are better than others. I would definitely assume that kind of, from Walmart to high end, there's probably a lot of middle ground of what you can buy for your skin.
I mean, even within the like the high end makeup, like they'll like even those aren't one of the best ones for us. And we believe that they are and all of these things because it's like, oh, you're paying for more, it must be really good quality. There's actually some apps that you can use that you can scan the barcode and it kind of tells you the ingredients that it has, how much it has, and like the effects that it can have as well. I forgot what they're called. I think when
EWG.org.
EWG, yes.
EG. Yeah, I just downloaded it actually recently just because I've been getting more and more into like the whole air freshener, like just not using any of that stuff. It's pretty interesting. It'll tell you if it's like low, medium, or high hazard. It's like I think it's looking at it online right now, red, yellow, and green. Yeah, you can scan it. Some things don't have it, but you could key certain things in and see how high it is. But super
What was the name of that app?
the EWG, Environmental
EWG.
Working Group called. Um, and so basically it's kind of reading everything of like how toxic. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Sophie. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I just stuck it in. I have like folders in my phone and I stuck it in my health folder.
You can even type in your zip code on that same website, ewg.org. You can type in your zip code and you can see what's actually all in your water on a local level. It's amazing. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually showering in that. Like maybe you're not even drinking it, but you're showering in it. You're bathing in it. So it's quite interesting too.
Yeah, it's super helpful. We actually have quite a few uh, clients and people in here today, so I'd love to answer some questions for y'all if y'all want to come on, unmute your phone, or type it in the chat. We got several of the coaches here. We'd be happy to answer anything for any of you. Cece, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you too,
Happy
Josh. Thanks.
to answer any questions that you may have, and yeah, definitely use us. We would love to serve y'all and help you as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm just still trying to figure it out. I don't know if you recall, but I had my family doctor wanting to do one type of treatment and my GYN suggesting another type of treatment. And then they referred me to my cardiologist who said those are both appropriate types of treatment. They both come with risks. So that wasn't really helpful for me. So I'm still trying to figure out what to do. I'm looking at maybe doing, so one wanted to do estrogen and progesterone and the other, I'm sorry, just estrogen. The other wanted progesterone and testosterone. So I think I'm just going to try all three, see what happens. I don't know. I haven't, I don't know. My testosterone was like at 11 and my estrogen was like non-detectable.
I
Um,
distinctly remember talking with you. Are you okay if I kind of bring up some of the things?
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
for sure.
just
Yeah.
wanted to clear that up. What about the cholesterol inhibiting medication? Did you talk to your cardiologist about that?
I haven't heard back from him. His office is really hard to reach, but I that's a good, I need to follow up on that. I'm hoping to come off of the medication. I mean, I don't have high cholesterol, so
Yeah,
I know I'm taking it.
you know,
So,
I think statins, they're definitely the first line defense, and we can give recommendations. None of us here are medical doctors, but just kind of anecdotally, what I see quite a bit is cholesterol is an essential thing for the body. Our brain's made of cholesterol. We need it to make sex hormones. It has a lot to do with cell membrane activity, so how well your cells are put together. And when we inhibit that,
mhm,
potentially could have low energy. Rhabdomyosis is also associated with statin use. So, fatigue, muscle soreness, muscle spasms. So,
yeah.
I would think about how much you can do holistically and then potentially remove that out of the equation if they feel comfortable about that. I know
Mhm.
familial component was a concern, right? And that was the reason. Or you have some familial, and then you had a medical incident where they put you on the statin, correct?
Right. Right.
Yeah, I would say that would maybe the most helpful thing. I got a lot of coaches here. Ladies, how many of your clients are on statins, and do you see that being having adverse effects to some of your clients?
Hmm. I can say I don't have a lot on statins, just maybe one right now. And I think the concern for me is like educating everyone on what actually is like the major hit markers, right? Is it just the fact that you had high cholesterol, but your triglycerides were in place and they were in good range, but it was just this seeing one number of overall cholesterol that puts you on a medication. So I think just a little bit more, maybe it'd be beneficial just to go into more uh direct, like what are you looking for? If you're looking at your blood labs, what would be something that would be a red flag for someone to go on a cholesterol low medication, and how long would you want to see someone on it on top of doing diet, lifestyle, exercise, all the things, so that people can have like a benchmark of like, I want to come off that again, right? If it was like a critical case scenario and you had to go on it,
Yeah.
right? So sensitive to everyone's specific need, but that's what I always talk with people about, understanding your markers and what's dangerous, what's not, right? Because I think doctors can put you on it when it is fixable and it can be reversed. But yeah, Justin, maybe you can speak more to that because you relapse every day, all day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some of the big things, and we do a really good job with our lab testing, is we look at LDLs, and a lot of practitioners are really worried about LDL. I think taking it a step further and looking at an ApoB, so that's going to account for VLDLs, so your very low density lipids, your LDLs, and then the particle count. Because just because your LDLs are elevated doesn't necessarily mean you have a ton of ApoB present. A cardiologist would tend to look at those markers a bit further and get an understanding of, are the LDLs disproportionate to the HDLs and the ApoBs elevated? I think Charlotte made a good point about triglycerides. When we look at your veins, really when we start to develop cracks and gouges in the veins, that's where plaque can build up, and we're all worried about plaque, but I think that's living in a low inflammatory state, having good insulin and glucose regulation. Blood sugar is inflammatory if it's elevated. So we really want to spend some time and make sure that we are in a healthy blood sugar state most of the time. We are having a low inflammatory diet. I think those things are important. And then take into account, is my cholesterol high? Because I see a lot of clients come across who may be on a more animal-based type of diet, lots of meat, lots of saturated fats, and they may have a high total cholesterol and a high total LDL, but their triglycerides are under 100. Their blood sugar is very low. It's like 75, and the hemoglobin A1C, the estimation of your blood sugar over 3 months, is very low. So blood sugar management is really under control. I think it's less problematic there. I think it can be very problematic. You have high cholesterol, you have very high inflammation markers, you're type 2 diabetic. Then I'm like, okay, maybe you should, if you can't correct those naturally, maybe physically you can't move, or you have so much genetic things working against you, you can't clean that up. Maybe those drugs make a lot more sense. But someone like you, Cece, who exercises, I know you do that for a profession. It's like you want to be able to continue to move, continue to exercise, and taking that medication may kind of hinder your ability to recover and perform, and may feel that on a day-to-day basis. So those are kind of my thoughts around it. Um, Other things to think about, kind of segueing into hormones. I think that looking at using bioidentical hormones for most women makes a lot of sense at a certain point. We think about estrogen being very beneficial for brain health, for bone health, for protection of cardiovascular system. But you really want to think about it almost in stages. So if you're like, hey, I think I'm going to take all three of these, maybe put it into phases of using it. Is maybe start with something simple like a testosterone. See how you feel on that. Give yourself 6 to 8 weeks. Then you could potentially think about using a progesterone 6 to 8 weeks. See how you do both of those, and then potentially add that estrogen in. The thing is, if you bring them all in at once and it all goes downhill, you're gonna be like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm done. I don't want to do any of this. So
Yeah.
I think of things as very much in a staggered approach, makes a lot of sense. So if something goes sideways, you're able to pinpoint it and maybe reduce the dose or look at an alternative administration. I think it's unfortunate that you don't have a practitioner who's willing to agree on all three, and you're kind of stuck in the middle,
Yeah,
kind of.
I'm supposed to decide what's going to work. Um, yeah, it's been hard. So I went with, because it just made sense to me. My family doctor said, okay, I feel like you were doing fine. And then we took away all of your estrogen when you had your hysterectomy. Um, and then you started having these symptoms. So it would make sense to give you some estrogen. So he put me on some estrogen. And then I started having, like my moods were just all over the place. And then I started getting headaches. So we took the patch off. Immediately my symptoms went away. He said, wait a week. I started it again. And now it's leveled off, but I'm still not feeling great. Like I'm doing all the right things. I shouldn't feel as bad as I feel. So I'm like, what's the next step? So yeah, it's kind of hard. And then, when you go to a Western doctor and, you tell them that you're talking to a hormone specialist, they try not to roll their eyes, but you know what I mean? They're like, okay, it's so yeah.
Yeah, and you can't fault them. They're very good at what they do. It's like, hey, I want to, if I'm in if an emergency situation, I want to go and get fixed. But when we look at nutrition and lifestyle, uh, supplementation, hormones, a lot of that's going to be further advanced treatments. I've worked in HRT realm for many years and see lots of doctors trickle in and get therapy because even though you're medically trained, doesn't mean you know how to integrate hormones into your own life or to be able to do that for patients. So there really is a lot of nuance to that. My big thing is we all pay a copay. We all have the choice to see whatever doctor's available. I know some
Right.
areas may be more rural and you may not have the availability to see whoever you want. But if you have the choice, I would always shop around for a practitioner. I saw three or four specialists before I decided to go with one. And I just think it makes a lot of sense is, they really are working for us and you want to be able to get good care. So you can be selective of who you want to work with.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
We have Gail here. Gail, are you a client or are you potentially just sitting in and listening today? Oh, let's see. I think you're muted.
Here we go. Yeah, I just happened to be on, is it Dave's Instagram, and I go, oh, hey, I'll listen to what they have to say.
Yeah,
I'm 69 years old, and just no energy, all that, and like she said, Cece, your doctor's like, okay, well, let's put you on this. Let's put you on this. Let's put you on this. It's like, no, 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 no. I don't, I'm 69. I haven't taken medication and I'm not going to.
Okay.
absolutely.
So,
Where are you
but,
located?
oh, I'm in California.
Okay.
Hmm.
What interests you in Davey and hopping on this call? I know you had to click a couple buttons to get here, so we'd love to make it worth your while and answer questions for you.
Oh, well, I just am interested in the, listening to ladies and their dilemmas and if it's close to mine and what they're doing for it.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Some of the things I think that are probably most important, and we'll have the coaches chime in here. Nutrition is probably one of the pinnacles of things we want to think about. Making sure we're fueling our body to do things on a day-to-day basis. I think historically, people tend to undereat to lose weight or feel better, and a lot of times it's being able to give your body enough fuel to do the things you need. So, if you are eating a well-balanced diet, I'd be making sure you're getting adequate protein, fibers, fat, enough antioxidant-rich foods. I think most of the coaches would agree with me on that. That's part of the foundations of things we work on. Um, Other steps would be looking at stress management. I think a lot of us want to pull the lever on exercise, but if we're not sleeping well, we're not managing stress well, that could be another thing really hindering well-being. So I tend to look at that. And then we can look at exercise because exercise is a stressor. I think we all need to move, but some of us tend to overdo it. I know I tend to overdo it. I love to exercise and go, go, go. So, I think that's kind of like some of our principles. Would love to hear if any of the ladies have any insights on that or any additional things they would add. But those are things that I tend to work with a lot of my clients, and I see that moving the needle for people the most is really working those pinnacles.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would also add on there, like I feel like right now there's an abundance of information online about like what's good, what's not, that it becomes confusing. I had a client yesterday talking about that. He's like, I read about this and what about this and all these things. And it's like having that guidance is also something that's very helpful because you know it's something that's personalized to you and what works best for your body. But definitely with the stress, that's something that like I can't stress enough of how important it is to just see that, but also having those daily habits like meditating or journal or finding those things that are for yourself. Especially I believe women tend to do spend so much time focusing on like their family, their kids, their this, that, and they forget about themselves. And that's something that I see so often, that like taking that time to take care of yourself, although it may seem like it takes more effort, in the end, you're going to feel so much better, that you're going to be able to give so much more to your family and whatever else it is that you need to do. And you're also happier doing it. Like you feel better doing it. You have more energy while doing it. Taking that time to sleep is so essential. And I think sometimes we forget about how essential sleep is. And like I would say like that's like the number one thing that people lack on sometimes. And it's not just sleeping, it's good quality sleep that's necessary because you could be sleeping for 8 hours, but maybe you're unknowingly waking up throughout the night and things like that. And it's just being able to find ways to optimize all of those things. Um, it's going to improve in your life in so many different ways.
I love that. I definitely I mean, also just understanding the client, like their lifestyle, where they are in their, season of life. I always like to ask them, like on one of the first calls, is just like, walk me through a day in your life. Like what are you doing on a daily basis? Like, what is your job? Do you have kids? What's your stress like? I mean, everyone has stressors and they come from different places. How do you wake up in the morning and then how do you go to sleep at night? What are the types of foods that you're eating? It just kind of like it paints a picture of the person and their lifestyle and what they're doing. So then I can kind of understand and come in and be able to give recommendations that like I'm meeting them where they're at. So I'm not just like throwing some arbitrary, like, oh, you need to go to bed at this time and that time. And, how many steps are you getting a day? Because a lot of times we read like we have to get 10K steps, but if somebody's only getting 3,000 steps, I'm like, okay, we need to work on building from there. So really just understanding who that person is. So I can almost like as if I'm like walking around with you a day in the life of what you're doing each day. That'll really just get me to understand who you are and then be able to give recommendations that really kind of, are just like the next step. In doing that, do you go to sleep late at night? Do you tend to like go onto Netflix and scrolling on your phone? Because all of these things are going to affect your sleep or your well-being or the way that you relax and unwind. So those would be like first, just that low-hanging fruit. Like where can we just start to just kind of implement better habits or better ways of being?
And so I just want to chime in on that. So like Lisa's my coach, but what you said about meeting people where they're at, like that's really important. And I really appreciate that you do that because, I was seeing somebody for massage because I have all these, like I'm hurting all the time when I shouldn't be. And, part of their suggestion was, well, you just can't work out. I'm like, you know who I am? Like, you can't just tell me not to work out. That's not gonna, like, so then I just turn off I don't want to hear anything they have to say because they've just lost all credibility with me. So that's one thing I really appreciate is, actually getting to know me as a client, and and what my life looks like, so that you're not telling me the same thing you're telling a client maybe doesn't exercise daily. So I appreciate that. And I have to say, as far as okay, so I was really desperate when I went to this. It's a med spa that has a hormone specialist, and I do believe she knows a little bit what she's talking about, but I don't think her level of expertise is near yours, because she just speaks estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Like, I don't hear her talking about any other hormones or labs or anything. So I just really feel like the knowledge that you bring is really good, and I think I might just have to switch it out because I'm not really sure that I trust that they know exactly what they're doing. Like, you just get desperate and you're like, I just want to feel better. Give me a quick fix. And I was telling Lisa this too. I try all the things, just like, this supplement, that supplement, do this, do that, don't do that. And then I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what worked. Oh, well, nothing's working, so it's, yeah.
We definitely appreciate that.
Mhm.
I've been working with all of these ladies. This is I think my second year anniversary, and this month. So it's like I've taken a little bit from all of them, and have learned a lot. I think we all have the same end goal, but each coach has their own way of doing things. And I really think that being able to be fit with a coach who speaks your language is probably the most important thing. So exactly what Lisa said is, if you don't understand that client's struggle and what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, you really can't help them. So being able to spend time, and I almost think of like nurturing and loving a client, so you start to have that relationship together, so you trust each other. That's really where I think change happens. And I mainly do remote coaching, and I have very deep relationships with a lot of my clients just because we spend so much time together. And being able to help somebody from being in a position of not feeling well to building them up and kind of watch them bloom into something else, it's super rewarding. That's the whole reason I do this. I love this. And every coach is going to do that their own way. But we all kind of integrate together. And that's what really why I work here, is that there's a lot of symbiotic relationship and everybody kind of helps each other grow.
Yeah, yeah. And I love all the recordings. Like, I don't know you, Sophie, but I feel like I do, because um, I've seen some of the videos, and then Charlotte, I think I've seen a couple of yours too. So it's like I feel like I know you guys, even though you don't know me. So yeah, there's a lot of really good information there. And then just paying attention to what I'm putting into my body, as well, just in just the terms of food alone, has been really huge. Like, because I never really paid attention to what's inflammatory and what's not inflammatory. So a lot of that stuff has been really helpful. But yeah, it's a rabbit hole when you start thinking about all the other stuff. It's just toxic everywhere, right? So
Yeah. Well, I'll add on to that, Cece. I think, we're all aware of how toxic the world is becoming in so many facets. It's just so I'll just hop in and say, like, we talk about mental stress, we talk about what goes into our bodies, how to nourish our bodies, but I'll speak to a little bit like how are we getting things out of our body as far as advanced cleansing goes, without just taking a supplement or to or about, something that's a supplement that will help, but it's not necessarily taking out junk. And so, we clean our cars, we clean our houses. So I'm always focusing now, like, how do I really truly clean my body out in a way that my liver is going to function better? My colon's going to be more absorptive. The colon walls are better. So I am all about detox. I liked all the factors of releasing liver stones and mucoid plaque and parasites and all the things that are a stressor to the body and create like this huge drainage block. And I would directly associate a lot of those to the symptoms that come up later in life, right? Because we just have not practiced truly detoxing and what that looks like. It's not the whole part of the pie, but I think it is a huge chunk that it's good to do our due diligence to learn how to do that and have our own best experience. I think the one thing I'm learning most is it just takes varying amounts of times for everyone when you do go into detox. It's not one size fit all, not one and done. It's just a continual process of peeling back the layers. And Cece, are you a dancer? Are you, is that, are you?
well, I'm not a dancer by profession, but I do dance. I love to dance.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I do fitness. I have a cycle
Okay.
studio and weight training.
Well, something that might interest you is liver cleansing. One thing that I really struggled with was a lot of pain, like joint pain, neck pain. And after I did one liver cleanse, like that has reduced dramatically. And I was like, what? That just blew my mind. Now, this is not a one, I'm not saying that's gonna happen for you in one, but something like
Right,
that is just anecdotal evidence of like how much do we really understand about how much these things that are sitting in our body for long term like affecting us. And so I
right.
think obviously food, cleaner food helps. Absolutely, 100% you have to have that. But if it's not taking care of the whole issue or you're not finding the resolve that you want, then that's when I think laying down the foundations and then going a step farther with advanced detox stuff is really going to be eye-opening for a lot of people. And it's really amazing what you can feel, even on an emotional level, because the emotional cleansing happens too when you physically cleanse. This is amazing.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
These
To add to that, we'll see if my internet holds up. So I'm sorry if I freeze. I might turn off my camera. So y'all let me know. But to add to that, I think part of like what I mean, Charlotte talking about the like detoxing and detox pathways and all that is so important. But in addition to that, and all the other things that we're focusing on, so like whether it's exercise or nutrition or whatever, all the pieces of it. I think one of the things that I like from the like functional perspective is that like to do any of those things, we still need to be supporting the body at the cellular mitochondrial level, which often can be really like simple, silly things that are really not silly, like all of the like mindset work and the stress relief work and just like eating simply. And I mean that, like eating food from the ground and like eating, like not out of a box and all of these things that like we know, but all of those pieces lay a deeper foundation so that we can get to the root. So like all of the whatever the cholesterol and the heart and the gut and all of those things, we're not going to make significant progress forward if we're not supporting the body at this really basic level of stress and stress relief and sleep and water and just movement throughout the day and joy. And I know that sounds so silly, but like, I truly believe in the Patch Adams approach and like how our mindset makes a big difference as to what our body's willing to do. And some of that even goes into like the belief, like, do you believe your body can change? Because if you don't, I promise it's going to put all the stops to it. But then it goes into a biological level. Like there are, we can get into stress and how the cortisol affects and how that affects where they're willing to burn fat and detoxing, like detoxing the body without supporting your body at a cellular like root level, then you're just in this perpetual detox cycle and you're not like able to like deal with the root of it. So anyway, I wanted to add my functional hippie mindset to all the things. I just think it's like so important to actually make progress and all the rest of it.
I love that aspect of looking at things from a basic biological level, cellular level. Things that we think about that most of us undermine is like getting adequate sunlight, throughout the day. I know my office is dark. I have a bunch of synthetic lights in here. I could spend 9 hours today in here just typing on my computer. But that's not healthy for me. So me being able to step outside, be able to connect with nature a little bit, spend some time in the sun, those things are going to help me relax, be able to sleep later in the day. I think most of us spend too much time in artificial light. So that's something I would consider. The other things is getting enough sleep. So Ashley talked a lot about cellular function. I think a lot of us undermine sleep as a whole. We're such a busy world now. We all, tend to sleep less and do more. And if we're looking at being able to get the body to recover, we look at immune function, we look at um, being able to remove oxidative damage, so inflammation from the body. We need adequate sleep to do that. So I think that I pay a lot of attention to that with my clients, as well as getting enough water, enough fruits, enough vegetables. I will say there's no quick fixes. I wish there was a quick fix to give me whatever I wanted. And I think that we live in an era now with social media is like take this or do that, and you're going to have this result, or you're going to feel this. And I don't think that, to my knowledge, I've never seen a one size fits all approach for anything that works for your health. And I think that being able to step back and really appreciate the struggle to get where you want and being able to work through those things, that builds a lot of stress resilience and will just help you become a better person. I think the body follows the mind, and we tend to train the body because it's easier to do that than to get your mind to agree with you. So I always start with the body, get that moving, feeling good, and then I start incorporating a lot of mindset. I think that most of my coaching is done through being able to connect with somebody and being able to shift their mindset. Ashley had a really good point there. If you don't believe that you can get better if you're ill, or if you're struggling with weight loss and you don't truly believe that you can do those things, you'll never do those things. But as soon as you start to believe, and that's what a coach is for, we start to just feed into you and let you see that you're able to do those things. And that compounds over time. And then eventually you're like, oh, I totally have this. I love to sit down with somebody. I'm like, remember where you were 6 months ago? I know we're not 100% there, but look how far you come. And that having those small wins over time really sets a stage for you to get to where you want to be.
I love that whole topic of like the mindset when you're talking about like the beliefs. I think people don't realize the way that they talk to themselves on a day-to-day basis and don't realize their own beliefs of like I'm not a norming I'm not a morning person. I'm not somebody who works out. I'm not somebody who likes vegetables. I'm not somebody, and it's like change requires change. And many times people believe that they're going to get to their goal by doing the same stuff but talking, and it's like okay, enough talking. I love talking and I love creating this mindset shift as well. And also motivation is something that many people tend to rely on, and action, like motivation is fueled by action. And once you start taking action, you start to see those changes. You feel like, "Ooh, okay, this feels really good. Okay, like let me do that." Like I hate working out, but I love the feeling afterwards. The second I put down the weight, I'm like, this feels amazing. And it's important to realize that there's so many times when we believe that we can't do something or we believe that it's going to be hard. We are going to find a way for it to be hard. We are going to find a way to make it impossible. And overcoming these beliefs is one of the most important things as well. Another thing that I talk about, I have a call specifically in the guide section that is called shifting your identity. Is if you have always identified as a person that is overweight or as a person that is sick or as a person that whatever it may be, and you don't separate yourself from that identity, you tend to go back to that. And it's so important to, when you want to let go of a certain part of your life, it is very important to let go of that identity that you have attached yourself with as well. Um, and that's something that I tend to go over a lot as well, when going over these changes, especially if you've never been somebody to work out or like any of these things as well. But yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. Corey, I see that you turned your camera on. I'd love to get to know you if you want to talk to us and tell us a little bit about you. If you're open to that, we'd love to answer any questions for you.
Sure, thank you. So, I've had a pretty complicated medical history, and I'm 47 now, and I'm a nurse. And I was diagnosed. There's a lot more before this, but I have a history of thyroid cancer, a rare autoimmune lung condition that's in remission. Then I was diagnosed with a connective tissue disease a couple years ago, and they had me on, I was on 9 medications and they were all interacting with each other. I was incredibly sick, and nothing was making me any better. I was actually getting worse. And a little over a year and a half ago, I couldn't even get off the floor. Like if I bent down to get something, I had severe proximal weakness. My shoulders and hips stopped working properly. But about a year ago, I started a pretty popular intense cellular detox program, and I went through that, and it literally gave me my life back. Like my hips and shoulders work again. I came off 7 of the medications. The 2 that I'm on are just for my thyroid replacement. I'll always have to take those since I don't have a thyroid anymore. And I lost weight and had energy and all of that. The only things now, though, that I'm really trying to focus on, because I did get so much of my life back, is I decided that this year would be the year that I address like the fact that my hormones are changing because I'm 47. My periods are still very regular, but I can tell that there are some things that are shifting in my body. And this particular detox program doesn't address that. Like, it addresses everything getting into the cell. And I know that that's happening for me now, but I'm trying to address where I'm at as a woman specifically. And I really now want to focus on strengthening my bones again and strengthening my muscles. And I really want to get really fit. And I don't mean just for how I look. I want to be able to live a long time in a strong way, and to be able to be here for my grandkids when they come. And, honestly, a year ago, I didn't even think that that would be possible because of where I was at. And so I'm just trying to figure things out and on my own, and I don't feel like everything says something different. And it's hard to piece the things together. I don't really know where to start.
Thank you for that. That's great. I would love to chime in on that. Before I do, I want to give the ladies, if y'all want to say something, but I have a couple avenues that I want to ask you on, but I'll wait and see if anybody has any questions first for you.
I was going to ask, like, what's symptoms specifically are you dealing with now? Like, I know you said that your cycles are still regular, but if you could talk to us a little, if you feel comfortable, like what's some of the symptoms that you're feeling? So then, obviously going into, this phase of life and perimenopause, a lot of it is symptomatic based. We can kind of do like a deductive process and understand like if there's some symptoms that you're dealing with. So that would be helpful.
So one of the things that I noticed is I started getting acne again, and cyclically, which I had terribly when I was a teenager. It was awful. And then I went through a nice quiet period with that for years, and now that has started again. And I don't know how else to say this, but my smell has changed. Like, there's something different with my. I know it's hormonal, and like I can tell it, like, really in tune with my body in that way, and something's definitely different there. My hair is changing. Um, I'm having what I consider like hormonal headaches. There, it's a very, very specific kind of headache that I get, and it seems to be cyclical as well. Um, they're just like, I can tell that I'm beginning to enter that different phase with perimenopause, that there are just things in my body that are different. Emotionally, there's some changes. Like, I feel like I'm really good at nourishing my body when it comes to clean eating, and I know about anchoring with protein, and I know about, reducing toxins. I have overhauled basically my whole life now when it comes to toxins. That's what I spent all last year doing. And so I've definitely seen, huge improvements, but there are just some things that I feel like as a woman haven't been fully addressed as to how I can support my body the best and then get stronger, because the program I didn't address, working out. And because I'm coming at it from a connective tissue disease diagnosis, I have to do things really low and slow, and I can gradually increase what I do, but I can't, like, all the other programs, they start you so hard, it seems like, when it comes to exercise. And my body, I would be out for a month if I tried to do that. I can slowly increase things, but it has to be done so strategically.
Thank you for that. A couple questions I would have for you. The auto connective tissue disease you have, is it EDS or EDS, or what specifically do you have?
So it's an undifferentiated one right now. And so that's why I say it that way. You may hear like mixed connective tissue disease or MCTD, but it is in the same family with like lupus and dermatomyositis, Sjogren's. I'm sure you've heard of those, but right now they don't know where mine's going to land because it has symptoms from different ones.
Sure.
But we'll say it's in remission in the sense that I don't have any. Ever since I did the detox program, I don't have any overt symptoms from it at all. The other thing I should have mentioned that I know is changing with me, I cannot sleep. And I thought that the detox program would address that. and it addressed everything else, but I still just cannot sleep. Like it's, I feel like I doze all night long. So I never go into that really restorative sleep anymore. And so I still have pretty good energy during the day since I did the detox program. Before I was so like fatigued, I couldn't do anything. It was just awful. Like I couldn't even think. And so that part's better, but I know I need good sleep and I can't do it. And y'all were talking about that earlier. So
No, that's very helpful. Um, a couple questions, and I'll kind of tackle some of your symptoms that I think potentially could be impacting. Did you change thyroid medication after doing this program, or have you always, are you on a compounded T4, T3, or do you take what do you use?
I take the synthetic. So I take levothyroxine and liothyronine,
Okay,
and I'm on 88 micrograms of the levo and 5 micrograms of the liothyronine. That's BID, so that's twice a day. Um, and because they just had me on the 88 micrograms of levo. I mean, thyroid cancer was many years ago for me now. So, and it came back. And so then they had to do the radioactive iodine treatment. And so, I mean, that was all really hard on my body. And the I I wasn't having cycles on just the levo. And so then they added in the liothyronine, and I started having regular cycles again with that T3. My body just wasn't converting that T4 to T3 very well. So
absolutely. I usually see that being an issue. You're an RN, you know this. We overprescribe Synthroid levothyroxine, and most people cannot, through peripheral tissue, be able to convert that. So we're extremely symptomatic. The other piece is if you have autoimmune related disease, cellular transport of thyroid, getting it into the cell is a whole other conversation. So I would assume after you do a severe or a deep detox like that, you probably learned about like thyroid has to get into tissue and into cell to be effective. So taking the compounded thyroid makes a lot of sense. I've been on compounded thyroid for years. I cannot use a levothyroxine. I have to use a combination of the two. Um, so I think that that's great you're doing that. You know, the things that I would consider, I always like to lay foundations first. So I think about hormones, making sure you have enough minerals. I'm assuming you're covering magnesium, zinc, getting electrolytes, doing all those baseline things.
yes.
A lot of those are going to be foundations for hormone production. If we look at catalysts to making antioxidants, we have to have minerals. So those are kind of like the most important things we consider. If you're doing that, you know, getting further evaluation of endocrine function. I don't know if you've been to your OB or PCP. What we tend to see is they're very sparse in labs. They may give you bits and pieces, but you're trying to guess. And I think of the endocrine system kind of like a symphony. We need to look at everything because if one thing starts to play out of tune, that the whole orchestra starts to be abnormal and we don't really understand what's going on. So have you done any deep evaluations um, on your endocrine function?
I have not.
I would consider looking at doing some labs at some point, getting an idea is like, are you ovulating and making enough progesterone? What does your estrogen look like?
Hmm.
Estrogen also can be very inflammatory. It can induce things like histamine responses and downregulate thyroid function. So if you're not able to clear those appropriately, so I think sophisticating testing makes a lot of sense. And then looking at stress response. When we look at autoimmune disease, if we have abnormalities with cortisol, I don't know if you've looked into that, but having a very flat car, so cortisol awakening response, you are missing out a lot on the anti-inflammatory effects in the morning. So those would be places that I would say, hey, I would start to gather some data on that and then being able to look over that and see like where is my weak link in this? There's something becoming abnormal. And then you could look at it from a holistic standpoint first, do as much as you can to maximize that. And then if you needed pharmaceuticals on top of that, being able to get bioidentical hormones or some sort of peptide therapy to help modulate whatever's going on would be my recommendations. Um, would love to ask you, what detox program did you do?
A Pampa program.
Pump program. I'll have to look into that. I've never heard that. Did I answer most of your questions? Definitely have the coaches chime in, but I wanted to give you some of my insights on that.
Yes, for sure. I appreciate that. And that's kind of what I was thinking too, is that's why I've been following you this little bit, is just it makes sense that as a woman that I need to kind of get an idea of what's actually happening hormonally in my body. And um, because I feel like I've done all the other stuff and it has really helped. Like I've seen major improvements, but now I think I need something a bit more specific to me as a woman, and looking at where my hormones are, and then looking at, okay, how do I make the improvements from here to strengthen my body and without overdoing it, but also getting the results that I need and want.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, some things that I would consider looking at. Precision Analytics makes a test. It's called the Dutch test. It will show you your dried urine metabolites. It's LCMS testing, so it's just as sophisticated as a blood draw, but it's going to show you all of your estrogens. So you have three different estrogens, how they process from a hepatic phase from the liver to how they methylate, sulfate, or glucuronidate into phase two metabolism, making sure you get a snapshot of that, snapshot of your progesterone metabolites, looking at your androgens. That also looks at cortisol and organic acids. That would cover a big chunk for you to figure out from a hormonal picture. The other thing, we have our dietitian on here as well. She does a lot of our GI map testing. She reviews a lot of that. GI tract is going to play a huge role in all of that process. So if we have any issues from a digestive standpoint, that's going to hinder everything up here. So we look at hormones, and a lot of times they're disheveled up here, but it's usually down here in the digestive tract where a lot of those things are reabsorbed and reprocessed. Ashley, if you want to talk a little bit about that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you may have heard, but the GI tract is also known as the second brain. So there's so much that really stems from that, and not only just like our nutrient absorption, which consequently is going to. Oh, did we just lose her? Oh no, you just moved on my screen. I was like, oh, she disappeared. Um, so not only like nutrient absorption, which influences our ability to burn fat, to like actually get the nutrients we need for our brains to work. And so there's so many pieces to the gut that it's like not only just in terms, like a lot of people are like, oh, I want the weight loss, but it's not even just that. Like if we don't have, I mean, as a nurse, like if we're not getting those certain nutrients, then our processes aren't working as well, right? Like none of the processes are working as well as they need
Yes.
to. And so in terms, but that also contributes to like how well we're able to detox things as well. And so like reabsorbing our, oh, I'm hearing myself double. It's weird. Um, reabsorbing hormones and stuff like that. Like if we're not able, if our gut is not functioning as properly, and we're not, I mean, even in the most simplistic term, in terms of motility, if we're not, absorbing and processing those nutrients, then we possibly are reabsorbing hormones that our bodies are trying to excrete, and or toxins and all of those things. And so that kind of goes, earlier in the call, I was talking about how like detoxing isn't helpful if we're not addressing some of those root cellular things, such as figuring out like maybe why we're not eliminating, because then otherwise we just keep having to redo the detox over and over and over, unless we can address things like our how well those systems are working, right? Like what's blocking that system from working as well, like what is hindering our ability to detoxify. And it could be, I say in quotations, as simple as having, a parasite or some bacteria overgrowth or something that are actually hindering the process of our motility and all of those things. I just think there's so many layers to it. And then it also influences our skin. Like I said, that I call it the second brain. It's like so many pieces, like our, we see it in our skin, we see it in our hormones, we see it in our mental health. You can have like anxiety and depression just from like overgrowth of bacteria. I said that so simply, just from overgrowth. That like, it's like, I don't know. I look at them all day. Like it is like, it can be more simple, but knowledge is power, right? So like knowing exactly what's going on, and everyone's is different. I actually had someone that I talked about their GI map yesterday, and she came in and just like, oh yeah, I mean, I just need to do this, right? And I was like, oh no, there's so much more to it than that. But that's great because she was like, oh my gosh, I like had no idea the different layers of it. And then when I started talking about like, you could possibly have all of these symptoms, and she's like, I do like have all of those symptoms. Um, and just knowing that improving that motility, getting rebalancing some of that bacteria helps us eliminate those excess hormones or even just like an imbalance, right? And all of those things. And then energy and sleep too, right?
Thank you. Yes, that's very helpful.
If you have any specific questions for us, I can drop my email here and I'd be happy to answer anything for you. I'll send it to you in a DM so you can grab it. Um, we would be happy to spend some time and do that for you. So just let us know.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Corey, is there anything else, or does anybody else have anything they'd like to chime in?
I have a quick question for you, Josh. Just I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time, but I'm curious as to when I was talking about the different hormones, um, why you chose to bring estrogen on last. Is that like specific to me, or is that kind of how you would maybe do it with anybody? I think you said testosterone, then maybe progesterone, and then estrogen would be like the last to come on board.
Yeah, that's a really good question. What I see when people have immune-based responses to hormones,
Mhm.
more times than not, it's estrogen related. So if we look at like histamine response, if we look at other inflammatory-based issues or issues with the digestive tract, estrogen tends to cause a lot of those issues. And say you have issues with detoxification processes, you're going to be potentially reabsorbing that estrogen. You take it, and then you're starting to have a bunch of negative side effects to that. So, I always see testosterone being less problematic. Some of your testosterone does convert into estrogen. You may get enough backfill from that to be able to replace your hormones and feel better. Then progesterone would come in. Now, why I would recommend that for somebody who has a hysterectomy, maybe improvements in sleep. We also know that it's going to help protect the bone, reduce inflammation to a degree. There's a lot of benefits to progesterone. Really, where you would need it all the time is if somebody has all of the reproductive parts. We're using that to stop proliferation of tissue. So, if you have all of your reproductive organs, estrogen causes things to grow. It's really good for your bones, it's good for your brain, but it can grow breast tissue, it can grow reproductive organs. So, we want to kind of use that as a protective layer. I see those two being less problematic, and then estrogen being the most problematic. I would say 70 to 80% of the women who come across here have menstrual symptoms. And if they don't have symptoms, they're probably in menopause and they don't have estrogen anymore. So they no longer have those symptoms. But heavy bleeding, cramping, PMS, PMDD, bloating, gas, constipation, those are things that I see associated with high amounts of estrogen and estrogen overload. So what I would hate to do is someone take all three of those hormones, bloat up, and then start having symptoms like they did when they were 14 and started their menstrual cycle and feeling terrible. So I like more of like a systemized program, and then being able to slowly titrate estradiol up to where someone needs it versus just slapping it on and going. Because you'll go back to your practitioner and be like, this isn't working for me. And she's going to scratch her head and be like, okay, let's up it or let's lower it. Like,
Yes.
it's like, well, why not just do things a little bit slower? It may take you a little bit longer to be relieved of symptoms,
Mhm.
but then you can pinpoint exactly what's going on in your body. So that's usually my thoughts around it. You absolutely need estrogen, but we want to make sure that there's no hangups in phase two detoxification, phase three detoxification. So that's where coaching, nutrition, GI mapping, all that stuff really shines. Is like, hey, we know that you're going to be able to process these things. Let's be able to implement them now. We know your body's primed to utilize them and then excrete what's not needed. So that's my thoughts. Everybody will have different thoughts and ideas around hormones. Not all of them are bad. Some of them are really bad, but that's just my thoughts around it.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. Um, well, I'm very thankful that everybody joined us today, and we will be meeting again next Wednesday. if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Great. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.